play, If It Bleeds, the Christine Chubbuck story, written by Brendan McCallum, directed by Ben Pfeiffer. Brendan McCallum joins us in the studio now. What was it about this woman and about this subject matter that made you want to write the piece?
Good question, Richard. I kind of stumbled upon it. Often as a writer, when you're working, in the process of working, you come across, you sort of unearth little nuggets that glisten in the water, and if you pursue them, it turns up something often quite beautiful. And that's what happened with If It Bleeds. I was sort of researching just for another writing piece that I was doing, where one of the characters mentioned the year 1974. And so I jumped onto Wikipedia and I did the what happened in this year sort of thing. And amidst all the sort of geopolitical instances that they talked about, like the US Arab oil embargo and all this stuff, there was just this little one-line piece in the Wikipedia entry about Sarasota newsreader Christine Chubbuck commits suicide live on air, and I just sort of stood really shocked in front of the computer and went, oh, well, who is this person? Why? What was this about? And following that link sort of led me to discover that the phrase "in living colour" became so strongly associated off the back of her suicide. It was one of the lines that she said here in living colour, a first, an attempted suicide live on air. And from there, I came across a Washington Post article by a writer called Sally Quinn, who basically did a breakdown of Christine's unfortunate suicide and the events and the context that led up to it. And it just sort of struck me how much potential there was, not only to sort of explore issues of depression and suicide, but also to tell a really good story about a woman who, seemingly had it all and yet somehow still couldn't make the life that she wanted for herself, and took the most unfortunate ticket out.
And in a very, very public way.
In an extremely public way, yeah. Part of Christine's story is how much she was somewhat revulsed by her industry's fascination with violence in society, and representations of violence are very much a big part of what If It Bleeds is about. But she was constantly wrestling with her studio boss and the network boss. WXLT in Sarasota was an affiliate of one of the larger television networks, and so they sort of had a ratings imperative to, as we see today, the whole phrase "if it bleeds" is "if it bleeds, it leads." So it's a classic sort of newsman's trick, I guess it were. But very public statement and reaction to the industry that she was working in.
It's an uncomfortable subject matter to explore dramatically, knowing that you could be accused of exploiting this woman's life and death for the purposes of entertainment.
Sure.
What would your response be if somebody threw that at you?
Well, look, I think that's probably a valid concern. It's certainly one that occurred to me in the writing of it. But the truth is that I sort of fell in love with the character of Christine Chubbuck that I'd encountered, and it's certainly not my intention to exploit her story. It just sort of struck me how she was just sort of buried. You had Network by Paddy Chayefsky came out shortly after that was partly inspired by it, and probably that's the reason why he didn't do a lock stock retelling of her story. Was maybe it was a bit too close and he could have been seen to be exploiting her story. But for me personally, it was just about trying to honour the kind of person that Christine was, rather than the event of her death, the circumstances of her death. She was an extremely witty, intelligent, beautiful woman who had flaws, and it was that and the idea that even on the surface, someone who apparently has it all figured out sometimes really doesn't. And what kind of indicators did she reveal? What sort of what sort of characteristics did she maybe display that people didn't pick up on, that still nonetheless led to her doing what she ended up doing?
Let's talk about you for a moment. this is your first full-length play, I understand.
Correct.
Yeah. You've done work previously in short and sweet. You're a writer and you're a performer yourself as well.
Yes.
So in terms of writing a script like this, does your own dramatic and acting background help you think about and shape and frame the work, knowing the way an actor would approach a script? How much does that inform the way you write as a scriptwriter yourself?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's funny because I often wrestled in the past with whether or not, I was an actor or a writer, or, they're sort of two sides to the one coin in a way. So, yeah, in terms of sort of the rhythms and nuances of some of the text that I wanted to throw out, certainly being an actor helped me in terms of, getting that stuff on the page. But it is a somewhat different process. But there are a couple of instances within the play that are sort of written specifically for an actor to sort of really embrace and play with. So that's a big part of it, yeah.
If It Bleeds, the Christine Chubbuck story, is on at Gasworks Arts Park from the 17th to the 27th of October, directed by Ben Pfeiffer. Tell me, how closely involved are you with the production? Are you the kind of playwright who writes the script and then just hands it over and then steps back hands off, or are you involved more than perhaps some directors might be comfortable with?
Well, no, I mean, in this instance, with it being what it is, my first full-length piece, and also Ben and I have a relationship that goes back a few years now, I basically took on board some of the suggestions that he and a lady by the name of Sophie Matheson, who we both know through VCA, took on board some of their feedback, did some rewrites, but basically once the script was in a position where we all felt it was ready to go, I was more than happy to sort of step back and place that trust in Ben. I've seen Ben's work previously, and he really responded, and Christine's story resonated with him in his own personal way, so I didn't want to sort of be in the rehearsal room as such. It's very much his thing now. It's one of those odd things where once you write something, you set it free and see what sort of life it takes on over time.
And who is playing Christine Chubbuck in If It Bleeds?
Christine is being played by Lauren Urquhart, I think her surname is, who I did have the opportunity to meet while Ben and I were talking about casting. And on the first meeting that I had with her, it really struck me how engaged she was with Christine's story. I could tell that it had sort of landed somewhere within her in a way that we just knew that she'd be able to really personalise and embed herself in the role and really do it justice. She came at me with a number of things in conversation about the period, about the nature of what television was like at the time, the sort of cultural background that that 74 has and represents, and Ben and I came away from that initial meeting and we were really confident that we'd found the right person for it.
Every time you speak of Christine Chubbuck, you call her Christine, so she's clearly very much more than just a story to you.
Well, I mean, when you spend time writing and exploring, an individual, particularly a person who existed, who was someone's daughter, who you can't help but sort of form some kind of personal relationship with them, and I spent quite a while, 2 years working on this play. So there's every sort of possibility that if I had have met Christine in real life, then I probably would have been equally struck by the qualities that I've tried to honour in the writing of this play. So yeah.
If It Bleeds, the Christine Chubbuck story by my guest Brendan McCallum, is running from the 17th to the 27th of October at Gasworks Arts Park. You can book on 9660 9666 or online, where you can read a bit more about the play as well at www.gasworks.org.au. Gasworks located at 21 Graham Street in Albert Park. And If It Bleeds is being presented by the Artisan Collective. And you can find out more about them at www.theartisancollective.com. Brendan, many thanks for joining us here at Triple R.
Thank you, Richard.